in the room now and 11 people online. Well done to you people online as well. We have one last session and then you can go to town on the drinks, well, in moderation, of course, and continue the networking. So if everyone at the back of the room could please come in and take your seat, that would be awesome. So we'll get straight into it. And I'm actually really intrigued by this next presentation, so looking forward to it. And if there is, as was pointed out to me, a bottle of gin that's not opened yet on the table in front here, we'll see how we go. I'd like to welcome Andrea Cross, who's going to talk about 150-kilometre feast. That's got me intrigued, that title. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It is really good to be here with my microphone on now. That's better. Now you can hear me. My name is Andrea Cross and I'm the daughter of a farmer and I have 3 sons. One is a farmer, one is a livestock agent and the other one is an accountant. So they work pretty well for us, I reckon. I think that's a pretty good deal. But I'm here to talk today about the 150-kilometre feast, which I'm employed by the local Horsham Agricultural Society. So I'll get into that a little bit in a minute. So we'll get straight into what is the 150-kilometre feast. And it is a harvest festival like no other. And all the food and wine is sourced within 150 kilometres of Horsham. If you know the region, we have lots of good wineries, but we're not known as a food bowl. And I sort of guess I wanted to try and uncover the food that we do have in the region. So it became a community collaboration under our banner, and it was to celebrate farmers, winemakers, growers and producers back in the event started in 2021. But I want to just reach back into our heritage and our traditions and customs of the Horsham Agricultural Society. Who knows what an agricultural or a P&A society, what their primary, what they do? Huh? Yay, they run an ag show, that's it. So that was my job, is to run the Horsham Agricultural Show. But our purpose is to promote the development of agricultural, pastoral, horticultural, viticultural, stock raising and industry pursuits and resources. So predominantly that was about the Horsham Show. I might just sneak back to that. How well can you see the Vanessa show up there? That's the middle side show. And if anybody can remember who's 60 and over, it used to be called Vanessa the Undresser. Anyway, I digress. So we'll go straight to what the show used to look like. This was about what it was like in the 50s. The car park was absolutely full to the brim and people wore their best clothes. They gathered once a year to go to their local agricultural show. And it was a place where the farmers could also show off, but they could also use it as a meeting place. So who are we? Who is the Horsham Agricultural Society? So we are part of the Horsham Showgrounds, but we own the land, which is 4.5 acres, and it was gifted to us back in 1915. So that came with a huge amount of responsibility. We built the buildings there, and of course, you know, as time went by, the buildings fell into disrepair. So I became part of the organisation as a volunteer initially, and then I was sort of thrown into the role of the secretary of the organisation in about 2014, just when we were broke. So we had no money, not a cent in the bank, not enough to pay our insurance to run our ag show that year. A kind person came along and gave us some money so that we could proceed. But we had crisis meetings and we had to do things differently. And we didn't know how to do different. We just did an ag show. We had maybe a ram sale at the showgrounds once a year, maybe a mohair goat show, and so maybe 3, maybe 4 events. But we looked at what we have got, not what we haven't got. We tried to give the land to council at the time and they weren't interested in it. Different story now, but as we sit now, we are an historic precinct and we've got beautiful rustic buildings like the poultry shed, as you can see here. And we repurposed these buildings. So this is the old cattle pavilion. It is now repurposed to host weddings, 21st, 80th birthdays, and lots of other things. And all we really did was take out the horse jumps and the hay and the mice and the wire and whatever else was on the floor, threw in a few chandeliers, and Bob's your uncle. This is stable 1, which was essentially just a stable, and we took the wall off and took out some partitions, and it's another venue on our property. Of course, I've got to have some sheep in there because we do have sheep show once a year, and that's integral in what we do as an agricultural society. And we're based on the Wimmera River. So what a beautiful view we have for our events. So let me get on to the feast. Where did the vision for the feast originate? In 2020, in May, you remember what happened in March, but in May, lockdown was obvious. It was going to go on for quite a while. And it was really important to me to keep engaged with our show community. How were we going to do that? We didn't know when lockdown was going to finish. And I looked at ways of how to deliver something online, to have an online show and have a presence. So I contacted our competition entries data company in New Zealand, and they said, oh, they're doing that at the Fred's Pass show up in Darwin. Give them a call. So I rang the girls up there, briefly talked about how to do an online show, which is another whole presentation for another day. But they talked about having their 50-kilometre feast before their show. And I said, oh, tell me more about that. And so they went on to say that they source their food and wine within 50 kilometres of Darwin. I don't know that they have wine within 50 kilometres of Darwin, but anyway, they have crocodile and other beautiful foods up there. I said to them, do you mind if I steal your idea? And they said, no, not at all, just don't steal our branding. So with that, I got home and I started designing the logo. I had no idea when this event was going to be. Remember, this is May and we were in lockdown. So away I went. I got things done, and as you can see, I'm wearing it today. So we made 50 of those for volunteers that we thought we'd need for the event. The first event once we knew lockdown was up and running, finished rather, that was the 20th of February. We sold out of tickets before it even went online for sale. And so I had to make a second date, and I said, let's do that a week later. And then we got another lockdown, didn't we? So I had to do 2 events. I asked the chefs if they would do back-to-back events, and they did that on the Saturday and the Sunday. And we built the dining room out of 150 large hay bale squares. And that was facing the river. As you can see, that's a shot from behind on the other side of the river. That's what it looked like from the air. And we had all our chefs cooked the meals in there, and it was an amazing occasion. The following year, we had it on a different part of the grounds, and again, the next year we had it in one of the sheds because it rained that morning, so we had to do a quick pivot. And this year we had it half in and half out. That's stable 1 that I showed you before. So yeah, it sells out very quickly, and it's a great food and wine event. We have a selection of chefs, and I've just selected these 2 because Kat, who's pictured on the right, she uses bush tucker in her dishes. That's another whole story. And then Andy on the left, he's a chef from down at Casterton, and he's originally from Scotland. So it was great to get some people still within, I think he made it by about 3 kilometres, being within the region of 150 kilometres. And we've engaged lots of volunteers over time, from our multicultural community through to school students. And these are our volunteers. These are members on our committee. Ronnie there, he's 94, he still dries dishes, and Lee's one of our younger members. But we couldn't do this without our sponsors, and we have 3 of those, and that one is self-explanatory. So what kept feeding the vision? You do something once, you do it twice, how do you keep going? You get awards, and it feeds your soul, and you just want to keep going. But sometimes you have to do things differently. And while we were recognised for that national award through the Tidy Towns, to win a local award for community services impact, that spoke volumes to me in why we were doing what we were doing. It had a huge social and economic benefit to our community. So last year I thought we should ramp it up a little bit, and so I turned it into a 3-day event. Probably not the best idea, but anyway, I did it. The second day was essentially a food and wine festival. So we had it outdoors, we had market, and everybody could come, and it was only $10. The dinner under the stars, which you saw before, quite a bit before, there, those tickets, everything was around $150. Tickets are $150 if you're a member of the Horsham Ag Society. You know, we had 150 metres of camping and et cetera, et cetera. So this is just some reflections of the Food and Wine Festival we had last year, and we did have it again this year. But last year I also did a launch brunch, and really by this time on the Sunday I was absolutely tired. So what has been identified along the way? So last May, one of my committee and I went to Fred's Pass, and we went to the 50-kilometre feast, and that's what it looked like through the day, and I don't have any nighttime photos, but suffice to say that we did it really well, and I'm actually proud to say that we did it well. I got to speak to the founder of their festival, who doesn't run it anymore, and I just knew that we were onto something. And a part of our something is sustainability. We use all recycled glasses and cutlery, and you know, these were made 4 years ago and we still recycle them. These are our glasses, melamine branded. We've had them for the 4 years that we've been doing it. So we keep on using what we have got in the cupboard. And while we haven't got it on our website at the moment, but I've just developed it for the sister event we did on the weekend, a small food and wine festival, we have developed an accessibility plan. So if anybody out there who is running events, it's really important to have an accessibility plan, because you don't need to have everything available. People with special needs or have a disability, they just need to know what you've got. They don't need to know what you haven't got. They just need to know what you've got. So that's been a really big identification, and it's got nothing to do with what we're doing here, but I think it's just really important to highlight that. That's just an example of some recycled timber and the food, what it looks like. So late last year, I was invited by Grampians Tourism to present our story to the Tourism Board, the Victorian Regional Tourism Board. So that helped us grow some legs. And then, of course, I'm here today, and I just am so honoured to be here to be able to share this story with you at 100 miles an hour, 36 slides. But that's okay. George said I could have more than 5, and I was happy with that. So looking at it from an economical viewpoint, this was last year's REM plan statistics, and you know, $500,000 was injected into the community through that program or that event. So I'm pretty excited about that. This is a general, this is the list, the number of sponsors that we have. So the first year it was obviously more, because we had to get more product in, as you know, somebody to make the aprons, someone to do the glasses, you know, we had to buy chairs, et cetera, et cetera. So we've had a lot of small businesses be part of it. And as you can see here, I've got some, albeit empty, bottles of wine and one full bottle of gin. These partners have been with us right from the outset, and I don't ask them to give their produce, because when they were coming out of COVID, like all businesses, you know, they needed a boost. So we bought them. We knew that we could afford them with the ticket prices. So it was important to us to make sure that everybody was looked after. Yes, it was a fundraising event to get us out of trouble, but we also wanted to celebrate our growers and producers. So how did we get to be here today? This is what I'm here for. So in October 2022, after a false start, I was invited to be a speaker at Rural Women's Day in Dunkeld. And at that event, Kirsten DeProse, who was also a knowledge broker here at Deakin University, saw the value in what we were doing, and she invited me to be involved in the Innovation Ag podcast. So I was in the first episode of that, which I was so excited to be part of that. Like who gets asked from the country to do stuff like that? So, and look who I was with, like Dr. Doreen Gupta and Ivan Shaw, you know, crop scientist and a dried fruit grower. I only got to year 10. So I feel pretty cool about that. Anyway, the story continues as why I'm here. So in June last year, here's Alina and myself and Natalie Collard, the former CEO of Food and Fibre of the Great South Coast. We formed a bond right there, and I was so excited to know that Alina was going to be here today and presenting as well. So it's about that networking. You just never, ever know who you're going to see. I didn't know I was going to have to use that photo, this time last year, but I'm so glad that we took it and we've got it. So with regards to the feast, sort of following that event, there was a lot of interest from the Great Southwest to potentially roll out the feast to other areas. And I've had interest from Port Fairy, Strathalbyn and Kangaroo Island since then. Now, while that hasn't actually happened yet, I'm confident that I know that one is going to get rolled out in the next 6 months, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. So part of what I love about this event is the collaborations that happen. And the two ladies on screen now is, on the left is Claire Morgan from Rapanyup Living, and she produces chickpea brownie mix. So she grows the chickpeas. Her husband grows the chickpeas. She packages them and produces them and sells them as just add eggs and butter and you've got a chocolate brownie. But she was talking to Jane Baker, who makes the gin, and they've collaborated to make a quince gin, and they are now going to launch that at the Horsham Ag Society in one of those sheds in November this year. So that's a great collaboration. In addition, we have been able to we've secured some funding to keep the feast going into the future. And I just want to focus on that for a minute, because when you've been running an event successfully for 4 years, you can potentially run out of steam, and there's a real danger in that. And when we did the feast this year, I was at that point, was like, can we really do another one? And we got this funding, which is amazing, because we're now working with 5 agribusinesses, and I've just got 3 on the screen there. And one of them is Rapanyup Living, Claire's chickpea brownie mix. And we've got Valuka Farms, who produce meat and sell direct, and Botanicals, which is they have not just honey, but they have skincare range as well. And you can see those little 150s on the produce. Part of this funding that we've got is to have an agreement with our agribusinesses to actually put our brand on their products, that they become, accredited, for want of a better word, with the 150-kilometre feast branding, and they're happy to do that. So I don't really know how I'm going to roll it out, except get some stickers printed, and they've agreed to stick it on their produce. But in saying that, the Valuka farm in the middle, they're going to run a 150-kilometre mini feast on their property at Landsborough. Zoe's sister is a chef and her other sister's a butcher, and she grows the meat. What a beautiful relationship. I'm going to come in and volunteer and do whatever they need for us to do a little feast on their farm. And this is the last slide. Just on Sunday, we did a little like a sister event to the feast, and we do it in the winter. It's undercover. It's about food and wine. It's about local produce. It's about local wine. And it's where our community can get together and do face-to-face. And I think with all the food and wine we have got, it is about being face-to-face, because we know what it's like not to be face-to-face. Thank you very much.
What a wonderful story.
How do I go?
I went to a conference in Darwin in 1994. They had the dinner out in the botanical gardens because you can do that up there in the dry season because you know it's not going to rain. And they made up a conference beer, and it was kind of a stubby with the Smiling Croc. It's the first conference, in fact, the only conference I've ever been to where they actually had a conference label. They had the beer specially made for the conference, so only in Darwin, but maybe you can do that as well.